Welcome to the Clearly Well podcast. I'm Elizabeth McKeon, a board-certified psychiatric mental health and addiction recovery nurse. This podcast aims to bridge the gap between mental health and substance use discussions, fostering understanding and empathy while reducing stigma. Join us as we amplify the voices of those with lived experiences, creating a non-judgmental space for their stories to be heard. Thank you for tuning in. Did you know that hospitals often have few protocols in place for treating patients with endocarditis who also use IV opioids? Good morning and welcome to the Clearly Well podcast. Today, I have a friend of mine, personal friend of mine, Ashley Jones. Good morning, Ashley.
Good morning.
So Ashley's here today to talk about a very, very sad experience that happened about 2 years ago. And it took her a little bit to get ready to talk about this, but this is the story of Ashley's sister, Erica, who passed away tragically about 2 years ago. So we can just dive right in if you feel comfortable. So I think let's just go back. You can begin at the earliest moment that you knew that maybe she either suffered from some sort of depression, or how did it all come about for you girls growing up?
I would say it all started in high school.
Okay.
About then. We had a lot going on prior. We were growing up with our grandparents at that point. And I think moving around away from our parents kind of pushed her into a depression.
Okay, so I'll back up then. So you guys actually were kind of adopted by the grandparents. Does that mean that there was some issues going on with mom and dad at the time?
Yes. My mom had lost her home at that point, and she had brought us to my grandparents, and it got kind of an ugly situation between them, and to a point where we ended up staying with our grandparents.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I'm sure, how old do you think you were?
I was 12, so she was 11.
Okay, so you're not even really teenagers. You guys were like what they call today a tween.
Yes.
So, okay, so that's really early on and kind of pivotal in the fact that you're going through puberty, you're going through all those important girl changes, and now suddenly you don't have mama bear.
Yeah.
So, okay, so I could see there must have been some depression going on.
Mm-hmm.
And were you big, like the big sister?
Oh, yes. She followed me everywhere. and oh, Lord, because we were 14 months apart. So we were Irish twins growing up.
Got it.
So anywhere I had to go, she had to be right behind me.
And what part of the country were you living in at that time?
In the Northeast, in Rhode Island.
In Rhode Island. I don't hear that in that accent at all. I know our listeners probably always hear my Southern accent. Yeah. They're definitely going to hear your Northern accent. And the two of us together are probably a nightmare.
Yes. Sometimes it does come out.
So, okay. So you find yourself at this point smack dab in the middle of puberty at a time where you need mom, and you are now with the grandparents. Mm-hmm. And are they of a good support system for you girls?
I think that they tried to be in their own way. They're kind of they're old school Catholics. They grew up in a totally different time, and just their way of raising, especially teenage girls, weren't, and in this time and day, wasn't exactly fun.
Okay, I got you. So you had some rules and regs in place by this time.
Yes.
So that felt very different, it sounds like, from coming from mom. Okay. And so let's just go ahead and go from there. So Erica is 11. Mm-hmm. And so when do you start to see things for Erica maybe going down?
I would say more in high school. It seemed like in the first few years she was okay. It doesn't help. My grandparents were kind of trying to push that, we needed this or we needed this kind of medication, and we didn't feel like we did. And so we would trying to skip it or pretend like we took them and things like that.
And do you think was that like an antidepressant or already
Yes.
at that time in your life?
Yes.
So you both had been treated for depression at this point?
Yeah.
Okay. And I refrained from using brand names of drugs, but I would say that was probably what we call a SRRI, a serotonin reuptake inhibitor, most likely. I mean, I don't know that for a fact, but so you're on these meds, and it sounds like sometimes you didn't want to take them.
Yeah.
And when you're not regular on your antidepressants, that can also cause problems.
Yeah.
So, what was Erica like? Can you go back and describe her?
She's hilarious.
Okay, welcome back to the Clearly Well podcast. So we took a little break there. So, Ashley, what were you feeling when I asked you to describe Erica just now? And we had to take just a little break because you got a little choked up on us.
Happy tears.
Of course.
Yes.
Oh my gosh, she was so beautiful.
And she was hilarious. Very artistic. Oh my gosh, was she artistic?
Really?
She could literally, you could just tell her something and she could draw it out. And
That's amazing.
within a day, we have one of her paintings that she did, and it was of Bob Marley.
Oh, really?
Yes.
That's so cool.
Yeah. So, and I have a bunch of her, it's in storage, of course, but a bunch of her drawings and whatnot. So
That's amazing.
yeah, I always told her she would have made the best architect.
Oh my goodness.
Yep.
So, okay. So tell me, where are we now? And we're in high school and you both are on antidepressants that you're not taking regularly.
Yep.
So let's pick up there.
So, especially as high school went on and whatnot, I think a lot of it was the people we started hanging out with were different.
When you say different, were they getting into maybe illegal drugs and partying?
Yes, definitely the partying and house parties every weekend and things like that. Whereas I worked all the time.
Okay.
So, and I would tell her, or there was times I would go and pick her up and whatnot, and I would tell her, you guys stop hanging out with this one or that one. But of course, it was always, you're just being the big sister, you're trying to be my mom.
Right. And were you suspecting that she was maybe possibly dabbling into some illegal drugs at that time?
Oh, yeah.
And what do you think she was using?
I think at that point it was mostly just marijuana, definitely the drinking. That's all I can really confirm that she was doing.
Yeah.
So.
And what age was that, do you think you guys were?
That was probably about 16.
Okay.
16, 17.
And that, I would say that's really common.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
I think the most people could say that at age 16 they had dabbled in some drinking and possible marijuana usage.
Yeah.
Okay, so just recapping now, you are working. Erica seems to be partying. And at the time that you guys were both prescribed, you said you thought it was antidepressants. We were talking privately during the pause. And what you think that you were possibly on methylphenidate, which would be a class of drug for attention deficit disorder?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
And so she was on the antidepressant and you were on drugs for attention deficit disorder.
Yes.
So you both were just dabbling with not taking that or taking that irregularly?
Yep.
Okay. And what happened from there?
So I would say about around then is when she started to try and the
Adderall or the methylphenidate?
yes.
Okay.
And not at beginning was not prescribed.
Okay, so
and
she was
whatnot.
taking your drugs.
Yes.
And did you know that?
No, not right away.
Okay.
And that was more towards, I would say, the end of high school, I
Okay.
should say.
And maybe you weren't thinking about how many pills do I have in my bottle, and
Yeah.
then maybe did you open the bottle and see that maybe some more were gone than what you would have expected?
I think I was just working too much and I was getting ready to graduate. It didn't really register.
Okay.
Yeah. And until later on when I started noticing.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. So going from there, you graduate, and now what's Erica doing?
That was tough. That was very tough because I moved out. I love my grandparents. I just need to say that. I just couldn't wait to get out.
Well, I think that's typical, right? All
Yes.
kids want to get out and get on their own.
So I had left, went to college, and Erica still had another year and kept feeling like I had left her, even though I know I didn't. That's just how it goes. But we had been inseparable all those years that's how she felt, is as if I left her.
Okay. So she was having some abandonment.
Yes. And I think that from, leaving my mom to go there, then I grow up and leave, and she felt like she was alone, even though I would tell her all the time she's not. But that's how she felt.
She felt that.
Yes.
Yeah. I mean, it would have been her first time trying to be almost an adult and trying to function, now without mom, now without big sis.
Yep.
Okay. And so what did you notice started to happen by this point?
At that point, she was actually working in the same restaurant that I had been working in. And I had noticed, because I had a friend of mine that had kind of kept me informed on who she was hanging around with. And I know that had a huge impact on her senior year, and that's when things kind of started going downhill.
Okay.
Yeah. The people she was hanging out with, they were doing more than just marijuana and all that. I know that they were doing pills and stuff like that.
Okay. And what kind of pills do you think she was using? Was this the opioid class of drug, or?
That from the people that she was hanging out with, I would say yes. I can't confirm if it really was, but if I had to guess, I would say yes.
Yes. Okay.
Yeah. I know that the other, the
methylphenidate.
Yeah, I know that was definitely in use in that point in time.
Yeah, and I mean, as I interview more people and get into this conversation, it sounds like that the opioid class of drug ends up helping to come down, and the methylphenidate or the methamphetamine is the pick-me-upper.
Yeah.
So they refer to that as speedballing.
Okay.
So, I mean, I just picked this up through language of others, but that would make sense.
Yeah.
Go up, 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 need to come down.
Yeah.
So, okay, so now what?
So around that time, she graduated. She did graduate, did really well in school. She was a bookworm.
Sounds like she was so smart.
She was the one that never needed to study. Now, me, on the other hand, I had to study and I'd still fail.
Oh, yeah.
School was not easy for me. No, that's why I did went to VOTEC and all that, because being hands-on was easier for me.
Yeah, that's its own type of intelligence. We know today that all the intelligences are important.
Yep.
So, so she was a bookworm. She graduates easily, does well.
Yep. She does start college.
Okay.
Doesn't really do much with it. Really starts hanging out with the wrong people. That's when I noticed, because she had met a guy, and things really took a turn around that time.
Okay.
Yeah.
And when you say took a turn, what exactly is that?
When I hadn't seen her for a little while, because she was at school, I was at school,
Right.
different states. And I mean, I say different states. It was Rhode Island and Connecticut. They're not far apart.
Right.
But for a Rhode Islander, that's far. But I had noticed just a visual difference in her.
And when you say I notice a visual difference in her, describe what that looks like.
She was starting to get skinnier.
Okay.
She was just looked tired all the time. So, and she would, well, I'm fine.
Right.
It's school or work. And I was like, okay, well, I can understand, because I was going to school and working 2 jobs too.
Yeah.
So,
and you both were tiny.
Yes.
Tiny girls.
Yes. Yeah.
As a lady myself who's over here at like 5'10", in stature and like a size 10, I look at these little 5-footers and I'm like, oh, they're just bitty. But
Yep.
So you girls are tiny girls.
Yeah, she was only an inch taller than me.
Okay. So she wouldn't have been able to really handle physically from her stature a whole lot of medication, right? I mean,
No.
without that really taking a toll.
No. When around that time she had met, the guy she had met was abusive, was pretty abusive.
Do you mean like physically abusive?
Physically, yes.
And what about mentally abusive?
I would say yes.
Okay.
I had known him previously and kept trying to not. It's one of those things. You say no, they say okay.
Yeah. Yeah. Oftentimes the more you push back,
Yeah.
Especially with a family member, is they just want to keep going down that path.
Yeah. And unfortunately, being only 14 months older than her, I didn't really think of it like that back then.
Right.
So, but I remember the last time that they were together, and thank God they had separated. They were in, I think, New Jersey or New York or one of them. And he had beaten her up and whatnot. So we went and got her. So,
oh no. So
but I think that was the last straw for him. But unfortunately, it was like a ricochet. She went right to another one that was just as abusive. If not, actually, he was more abusive.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah.
So she's now in a very big downward spiral.
Yeah. And
I'm so sorry.
the next one that she was with was even worse. And he was already ahead in his drug use.
Okay. And when you say drug use at this point, what do you think he's doing?
Is
this at this point like IV drug usage?
Yes.
And do you what class of drug do you think that was, like heroin?
Yes.
Okay.
Yep.
And what year do you think that was?
Oh, it was in I would say her early 20s.
And what year do you think that was? Because I'm trying to put that in perspective to when heroin was still available on the street.
2010, maybe?
Okay.
Around
So
2010.
yeah, so heroin was still out there. There wasn't much fentanyl yet, if any, not really regular. And today a lot of people don't know this, but you can't really get heroin now.
Yeah.
Now it's just fentanyl and fentanyl with xylazine and all the evolution of that. And I'm going to talk about that on a later podcast about xylazine specifically. But I think in around 2010, though, we're already seeing a huge uptick in the IV heroin usage and the opioid epidemic, especially from the prescribing side of things. That there's a lot of what street people call pill mills. Pills are available on the street. Prescribers have not yet been put into the prescription drug monitoring program, which doesn't come out until 2017.
Yeah.
So we are 7 years prior to that drug monitoring program that prescribers had to report what they prescribe.
Yeah. Yeah, we I should back it up just a little bit
No, please do.
before that I know of that she got into that part, the IV drug use.
Okay.
I had a surgery because we had actually moved in with each other for a little bit.
Okay.
I had a bad breakup. So we had gotten a place and we were living with each other, but I had surgery done and they had prescribed me
An opioid?
Yeah, an opioid, sorry.
No, that's a hard one to say if you don't say it all the time.
And I only took them at night because I don't do well. I have bad reactions to them, but it would help me sleep.
Okay.
So I had woken up the next day and I couldn't move because I had had surgery on my stomach area, and my whole bottle of pills were gone. And I couldn't find them.
Oh no.
And I looked everywhere, but I couldn't go up the stairs because I couldn't climb the stairs yet. So my mom came over and she had found the whole bottle in the bedroom. And at that point, I think we were still kind of naive to everything.
Right.
And we were just blaming the boyfriend. Because I'm like, there's no way she would do that, especially.
Right.
And I think that it was just like a combination of what he's getting her into. And and I had left it right on the counter, not thinking anything of it.
Well, and by this time, I would say if she had been maybe messing around with that class of drug for a while, when I say that class of drug, I mean the opioid class, it doesn't take very long to become addicted to these drugs.
Yeah.
Within about 14 days of regular usage, you are fully addicted to this class. So, of course, at this point, she's seeking. So, and you guys wouldn't have probably known that, right?
Yeah, exactly. I think we were still a little more naive to the whole thing.
So you backed it up to that as a precursor to what you think is going on now. Now she's losing weight. Now we see physical evidence that there's something more.
Yeah, she had gotten pregnant around that time.
Okay.
She actually did very well during that time. She gained weight back. She looked great. It was like her old self again.
Okay.
And she was like that for, I would say, about 2 years. I think that having her daughter kind of pushed her into a better lifestyle, but then she kept the boyfriend.
Yeah.
They would break up, get back together, break up, and it was just a vicious cycle the whole time. And he was not very nice to her at all.
I'm so sorry. I know that was hard as a sister to watch.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. and especially to see my niece watch it too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. So how old is the niece at this point?
She's about 2 years old about this point. They had gotten back together, and that's when we noticed a big difference in everything.
In a good way or a bad way?
In a bad way.
Okay. What happened?
So not too long after, maybe she was a little less than 2. I think she might have been less than 2. They wanted to go out. You know, parents, they do need their time too.
Of course.
Brought the baby to his parents' house, and they basically kept the baby. I'm pretty sure they knew that their son was already doing other things. They were very good at putting everything on Erica. Everything was Erica's fault. And they made it out as if she was a bad mom. And at that, she was not a bad mom. And I think that threw her over the edge because they had a lot more money. They had very good lawyers, and they were able to get full custody of my niece, just like that.
Wow. I'm sorry.
And that threw her over the edge big time. And if anything, I would say that's what really started the heavier stuff.
Okay.
Yeah.
Because I think one of the things I try to put across the board in this podcast is that there is a direct link between mental health and substance use disorder.
Yeah.
And it's very clear from the beginning of the story that was the case.
Yeah.
And now Eric has basically lost everything because your child is everything.
Yeah.
And she had been doing a good job.
Yep. She was a great mom to her.
So now she's lost her baby. I want to state that please do not substitute this podcast for professional therapy or treatment. The content shared here is for informational and entertainment purposes only. We do ask our listeners to respect the diverse experiences of individuals and refrain from passing judgment. If you or someone you know needs professional help, please seek the guidance of a registered and qualified mental health professional. Clearly Well is brought to you by Healthy Georgia and produced by CNC Media.